Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast. Today, we'll talk about whether the number one seeded Ravens and 49ers should rest their starters in the final week of the regular season. We'll also talk billionaire owners throwing temper tantrums and drinks at people. What planet are we living on? And we'll make sense of the playoff picture, especially in Pittsburgh. BMac, somehow there appears to be a quarterback controversy. On what planet, again, are we living on where three backups are having quarterback controversy? We'll talk about that. I'm Ryan Wilson. That's Bryant McFadden. That's Leger Douzable. Two longtime NFL players, and me. How we doing, guys?
Man, good. Can't complain. Can't complain at all. A lot to talk about as you discuss, Rye. It'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say about the Steelers and the quote-unquote quarterback controversy. I don't think there is a controversy needed to be had, but it'll be interesting to get you guys' point of view.
All right, before we get to that, BMac, we'll save that to keep people interested. But I want to start with this. You're a proud Florida State alum. Keep your face straight now. How do you overcome a 63-3 whooping by the Georgia Bulldogs in that orange? Well, what is going on?
Well, to tell you the truth, man, I did not expect to see a lot. My expectations were extremely low. And it wasn't just about the guys that opt out. What people didn't hear about was a lot of the other starters were having surgeries, you know what I mean, getting ready for the offseason. So what happened was, a lot of the players that played in that Orange Bowl was either third or fourth stringers. That's why you saw so many true freshmen thrown into action. And you can say whatever you want to say. It was the Orange Bowl, not a playoff caliber game. But Georgia played at least 90% of their guys because they had some opt-outs. Brock Bowers opt out. Mims opt out. Everyone else pretty much played.
Yeah, Carson Beck.
Yeah. A lot of their starters were underclassmen. Yeah. Carson Beck probably would be a first rounder last year. He played. Yeah. Lad McConkey, the best pass catcher outside of Brock Bowers, he played. All three or four of their running backs played defensively. Yes, they lost the linebackers to Kentucky, but they were loaded. I mean, when he got hurt, a true freshman jumped into the lineup anyway midway through the season. They didn't miss a beat. So for us, you talked about, how lopsided the game was. I mean, Leger, you know how it was when, as a true freshman. If your first time seeing significant action was against one of the best teams in the country, loaded with pro prospect after pro prospect, you're going to go through some growing pains.
That's an understatement because I can remember my freshman year, right? We traveled to Madison, Wisconsin, right? 83,000. I've never seen that. It was Florida dudes. Like, football is big here, but it's not like where it's Texas where 30,000 people show up at the game, right? You might get a couple thousand here and there. And if it's a rival game, maybe max out at like 10K BMac. So, like, going to Wisconsin, my true freshman year, first game, and that jump around comes on, I was like, yo, what is this? Right?
Look at that. Producer Harry knows what's up.
Yeah, I can only imagine, like, what those true freshmen were dealing with, playing against Georgia in that scenario, especially when they haven't played all year long. To your point, BMac, I didn't expect a lot. I didn't expect 63 to, what was the score, like 8 or something like that? I didn't expect that.
No, they only scored 3.
Only 3.
Good Lord. So
it was ugly.
Yeah,
it was ugly. But I'll say this, though, Leger, if it was the other way around, if our Jordan Travis, Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson played against their 3s and 4s, it would probably be the same thing as well. Jared Verse, could you imagine Jared Verse going against a true freshman left tackle or a guy who really hasn't seen a lot of action? Yeah. Like, so it was a tough spot to be in, but I mean, 13-1 is not a bad year. I mean, a lot of universities would love to have a 13-1 type scenario record-wise. And we're gonna tap into the recruiting trail once again. We got some guys coming in. It wasn't just about the guys that opt out, man. We had a lot of guys that had season-ending surgeries, like after the Louisville game. Tatum Bethune, Joshua Farmer, who wasn't even a starter defensive tackle, but he was third in the rotation. Fisk. So it was a lot of guys that were there but didn't participate because, they're dealing with injuries.
By the way, if that score had been reversed, Danny Cannell would still be peacocking around town on Twitter.
He's still going strong right now.
He is not afraid.
Hey, Ryan, I know we got to move on, but I just want to hear what BMac thinks about you guys getting DJU.
Let me ask. I was going to set that up. So, BMac, you guys get DJ Uyunglele coming from Oregon State by way of Clemson, and then you can follow it up, Leger, with the Arkansas kid, KJ Jefferson, coming over to UCF. So, BMac, you start, and Leger, you finish up.
I'm happy we got an experienced quarterback because, one thing about college football, if you don't have an experienced guy at the quarterback position, you're going to struggle. Ask Ohio State, right? Ask Ohio State. They threw that true freshman into that fire. That offense was a bit stagnant. You know what I mean? So having an experienced guy come into Tallahassee, along with some of the younger quarterbacks, to get an opportunity to learn from, because we threw Brock Glenn into the fire, another freshman. The lights were too bright for him. So he gets an opportunity to learn from an experienced guy. So I'm happy.
Man, right. KJ Jefferson, to me, that was the biggest win out of everybody in the transfer portal. When you look at guys like Riley going to Notre Dame, I think KJ Jefferson was a guy going into the season. I think a lot of people thought he would go on and go into the NFL right now. They had probably the hardest schedule besides South Carolina this year when you talk about who they had to play week in and week out in the SEC. And he dealt with being banged up a lot this year and no continuity in the run game for Arkansas.
Raheem Sanders was hurt for much of the
season. Exactly. So when you look at what KJ Jefferson has done in totality, he's a perfect fit for this, Malzahn, Henshaw offense, big body quarterback that does have some mobility, but he has the big arm. And the thing that's not talked about enough is the offensive weapons that are coming back. A lot of people thought Javon Baker, who he still may declare, because I heard he may have gotten a third or fourth round look at NFL scouts in regards to maybe leaving. Kobe Hudson's coming back. RJ Harvey, the running back, is coming back. So imagine that three-headed monster with KJ Jefferson. I think that's why a lot of people in Orlando are excited, and a lot of people are saying they have a chance to win the Big 12 this year.
I'll say this. I know the transfer portal causes a lot of headaches for people in the colleges and coaches. I love it in terms of, because it's just like Madden in terms of you getting your favorite player with some crazy trade or some dude with NIL money can get that guy there. So, all right, I'm glad we could end on a happy note, given how things ended for the Seminoles. And Danny Cannell will keep us updated on any future comings and goings, BMac, so we can rest assured about that. All right, let's move to the NFL. Both you guys played long time in the NFL, and I'll ask you, BMac, because I know, let's see, the 2005 team had to make a comeback, that Steelers team. They had to go through the wild card. I don't know if the 2018, did you guys get a bye?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what was the thought process? I'll ask you in that final week of the season. I don't know if you needed to play that final week, but what was Tomlin's thinking as you prepared to get ready for the playoffs, knowing that you were almost certainly going to have a chance to rest?
That final week, I think we played Cleveland, and 31-0 was the score. 31-0. And basically the starters played, but Mike Tomlin was telling all of us, like, listen, there's no need to play around. We want to win. Most importantly, we want to get you guys involved, get the blood flowing a little bit, but let's come on out. Let some of the young guys get into the lineup and let them take it from there. And that's what we did. We started with a fiery, jumped out early. I think our offense scored the first drive or the first two drives. After that, it was like a preseason game, Leger. Everyone came out, right? And the younger guys got in and went to work. You went to work. And, of course, for Cleveland, they had nothing to play for. So that's another thing, too. When you talk about playing against a team that has nothing to play for in the final week, if you jump on them early, they're getting cruise control. Because the last thing veteran players want to do, especially when you know your season is done after this game, is to go off into the offseason with an injury that you didn't have before that final game. So they're in cruise control. They try to protect their body and try to get out scot-free so they can enjoy their offseason. So for us, we played, but we didn't play the full ball game. And I would love to see exactly the mindsets of teams like San Francisco and Baltimore, who have everything locked and loaded, how they will handle their starters because they have 2 weeks off.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, I know just knowing Kyle Shanahan and playing for him, he's not going to put anybody at risk, right? Now, the thing is, we know this 53-man roster, 47 dress, and then you'll get a couple other guys that can dress via call up from practice squad, right? So you're thinking about it, your roster is only going to have about 49 guys, right? Then you got the emergency third quarterback. So you can't rest everybody, right? Because depth is going to be an issue. You don't want guys essentially treating this like a preseason game where guys that you're going to rely on, like the third defensive tackle or third defensive end, not only is he doing special teams, but now he's got to take every starter rep because you put him at risk for getting hurt. So it'll be interesting to see. I know Kyle Shanahan, they already said Chris McCaffrey's not playing. It'll be interesting to see with, Brock Purdy dealing with the stinger. Does he sit him down as well? And maybe a George Kittle and a Trent Williams, they sit them down. But I could see Brandon Ayuk still potentially playing. Debo, because he's dealt with injuries, they probably shut him down as well. They may dress these guys just in case they get dinged up too much right? But majority of the frontline guys probably won't play. But the thing is, there's only 8 spots in regards to shutting guys down that you can use. Yep. So you got to account for guys that are actually injured as well, too. So a lot of these frontline guys will play. Now, John Harbaugh, right, looking at what they've done in the past and just knowing his mentality, I think the starters are going to play at least. Hey,
Leger, let me set that up for you because that's an interesting point. So they were 14-2 in 2019.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah. So they were 14-2. They played BMac Steelers and they won with RG3 versus Duck Hodges. And they didn't play a lot of dudes. And then they were dead in the water when they played the Titans.
Correct. And I think, and that's a perfect setup, right? I think that's in the back of their heads, right? The year that they had in 2019, Lamar wins the MVP, they're the number 1 seed, and then they get boat raced at home, right? Because if you think about it, if they rest everybody this week, that's essentially almost 3 weeks off before they've played a game, right? So honestly, knowing John Harbaugh, and then on top of that, right, BMac, you know this, the last thing you want is a divisional foe to get into the playoffs. I know they're playing you and Rod Steelers, but that's the last thing you want, a team that's in your division that knows you, who you already lost to this year. So it would not surprise me if Lamar Jackson and the starting offensive defense play at least the first quarter, and then I believe Huntley will come in the game probably in the second quarter, just because you don't want to be that rusty for 3 weeks before playing a playoff game where it's do or die, win and go home. I think Harbaugh will actually play the starters for at least the first quarter.
Yeah.
Did you have any fear about being rusty, BMac, after sitting down for a couple weeks?
No. I mean, that 2008 year when we had to bye, we were the number 2 seed right behind Tennessee. We were happy we had the bye because, it was a long season, mentally fatiguing. Same could be said for the physical side of things as well. So we were happy to have that off week to be able to watch football. You know what I mean? Recalibrate. Now, my rookie year, of course, when we were in desperation mode going all the way back to week 13, if we had a bye, we didn't want it because we were rolling. I mean, the way we were clicking, it was like, yes, regular season ended, playoffs next week. Let's keep it going. We needed that because we were in a streak. So I see it from both sides. Some teams that are playing some of their best football, like prime example, Buffalo. If Buffalo wins, if Buffalo gets into the playoffs, they're in a division, you know what I mean, where they're going to be division champs. So for them, they don't need a bye because they've been playing some of their best football in the last 4 weeks. So that's the rhythm that was established for them to be able to get into this point where they win and they're in. So I see from both sides, but 05, we didn't want to bye. 08, we kind of needed that bye just to kind of recalibrate and take our foot off the gas before getting right back into playoff mode.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, BMac, because I think that's where the Ravens are at, right? If you look at what they've done the last 3 weeks, I think everybody would say they've proven that they're the best all-around team the last 3 weeks. And you look at the tier of teams they've played, right? You got Jacksonville, who, if they win, they're going to win their division. They boat raced them in Jacksonville. They went to the 49ers, right? Before that game, everybody thought the 49ers were the most complete team in football. They boat raced them at Levi Stadium. Then they played the Miami Dolphins at home this past week, and they boat raced them. So you got to think, John Harbaugh was like, man, we hit our stride at the right time. We got to get our guys some work this week just because we don't want it to be that long of a layoff before they play again.
The other side of that story is, though, that's sort of funny. It also involves the Ravens back. I remember this, too. Back in 2003, the Steelers, that's the last time they had a losing season. I mean, Tommy Maddox was playing. They had not drafted Ben Roethlisberger. The final game of the season against Baltimore, Brian Billick, the then coach, was trying to get Jamal 2,000 yards. So he played his dudes. And look, Baltimore won that game 13-10. Jamal went for over 100, and I think he got that number. But it also put the Steelers in position to draft some dude named Ben Roethlisberger by giving them that loss. So you can stick it to your rival early, or you can stick it to them later. But the point is that, and by the way, the Ravens the next week in the playoffs, they lost at home to the Titans in that year too. So I guess the good news is the Titans ain't in the playoffs. But yeah, so it's always fun to see how the AFC North in particular shakes out. BMac, you guys hate the Ravens more than anybody else, or did it depend on the year?
Depends on the year.
Okay.
We hate the Ravens, but we respect them. We hate Cleveland, don't respect them, and we hate Cincinnati, and there's no respect there either. That's how it goes in that order.
You Cincinnati, didn't you?
Say it again.
05, you respected Cincinnati?
No, we definitely hated Cincinnati then because they actually thought they were better than us.
You had to go there and teach them something. Yeah. I don't want to bring it to Carson Palmer stuff.
Hey, Please don't. No,
I won't bring that up. Leger, when you were playing for Rex Ryan, was it the Patriots?
Oh, without a doubt, it wasn't even close, right? Same thing, right? Like the Miami Dolphins and the Bills at the time, like I don't know if we just disrespected them, but we just really didn't like the New England Patriots. Like I hated the New England Patriots.
They were easy to hate.
I mean, they whooped us almost. But the crazy thing is, when I was with New England, when I was with the Jets, we split with them every year, and that's why Tom Brady always hated playing against Rex Ryan because he just knew he was going to get him a different look, and that pressure up the middle, which has always caused Brady issues. That's what Rex Ryan was known for, right? There'll be plays, be like, we'll have 8 guys at the line of scrimmage, and it'll be a 3-man rush, but somebody will be scot-free just because you didn't know where we were coming from. Like, that's what Rex Ryan does, and the confusion that he brings to a defense. So it was always the New England Patriots. And people will ask me, even my guy Calvin Pace, who I play with, he was like, dudes, why do you hate them so much? I was like, I think Rex just put it in my head that we have no respect for these guys because they think they just better than everybody, which they were for a good portion of Tom Brady's most of his career. But we just always hated that they felt smug like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They were easy to hate as a Steelers fan, and BMac knows this. I mean, 04, the Steelers beat the Patriots. 05, I think you lost at the end of that game at Heinz Field. I think that was a close game. I think Antoine Randall may had a fumble or something. I can't believe I remember that. And then that 07 game when Anthony Smith was talking before the game, that didn't work out too good. I think that was 07.
Tom Brady went out there and threw for about 400 yards.
That's like, Anthony, don't talk. All right, let's move on to another man who probably should do less talking or even being seen. Panthers owner David Tepper. And I want to talk about this because, Leger, I'll ask you first. Like, as a player, I mean, he's the boss. He's the dude writing the checks. And when you see that video, and I think producer Harry's going to show it, you also see Scott Fitter, the GM, standing there, and he might as well be a statue because he doesn't know what to do. He's like, I'm not making a face. I'm not even moving until the dude leaves, and then I'll figure this out. I mean, that's Fitter in the white long sleeve shirt there, the dress shirt, and there goes the drink, and the boss leaves. He's like, yep, I'm going to pretend like he ain't even there. Like, how do you, like, when the owner comes to talk to you in the, I mean, I don't know how you, I was talking to Rick about this as well in the podcast, Rick Spillman, and he's like, there's nothing you can do because I feel terrible for Scott Fitter, but that's the dude writing the checks. Is there anything, like, are you talking about it with your dudes in the locker room? Like, how do you sort of take all this in and make sense of it?
Man, I went to texting people right away from Carolina when that happened because I saw it and they hadn't seen it yet, obviously, right? Because the internet is fast, it's instant. Like, that's the difference between like a few years ago and now. Like, as soon as something happened, it goes on the internet. So I texted a few dudes, they were like, what the F is literally what they said. So like, it's crazy to me. I've had this discussion all day long over here at CBS. And the thing is, it's a scenario where the players are always held to a higher standard. And we get it, right? Because there's only a minute amount of players BMac that can do what we do, right? Or people on earth that can do what we do. Yep. Well, there's even less owners in the NFL, right? There's 1 of 32. So it is a privilege to buy into a team, to be an owner in the NFL. So if you're going to hold your employees, the players, and people upstairs to a certain standard, why does it seem like owners are never held to that same standard? Again, when you look at it, the $300,000 fine was like a drop in the bucket for this guy.
Question.
I think they said they accounted for like 176 in real life.
Somebody did the math on it. I think, depending on who you ask, David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, is worth between $13 or $20 billion.
Yeah, he's one of the richest owners in the league, if I'm not mistaken.
And when you do the math, it literally is like charging someone who makes $100,000 25 cents, a quarter. That's what the fine is.
So what is that going to do for him, right? Like, he's writing that off. My thing is there should have been some type of suspension because I guess this is maybe pushing it far, but that's technically assault, what he did, right? When you throw a drink on somebody.
Hey, Leger, he threw the water on the right one because me would have been sitting down, man. My eyesight ain't the same no more. I'm emotionally distressed. I'm nervous. I feel some type of way.
I would have jumped in front of the water. I would have jumped in front of the water and been like, was there acid in there?
Yeah.
But guys, think about this though, real quick on this whole Tepper situation. Unprofessional at the most, right? Yeah. And you're an owner, one of the richest owners in the league, as you mentioned. It's only 32, and he got hit with a $300,000 fine, which, as you stated, Ryan, it was like pennies. It's a quarter to what he's worth. But then Big Dom from the Eagles security, he can't even get back on the sideline.
That's what I'm saying. It's a double standard, and I don't get it. My thing is, there's no way he should have been allowed to be at this last home game. BMac. It should have not only just been a fine; it should have been a suspension as well.
Yeah, he should have been suspended because when you talk about the head of security for Philly, kind of got in a little tussle verbally with a player. You removed him from the sideline instantly. Yeah. Then the following week, you said he can't go on the sideline. He has to watch it from a box
for the rest of the season.
And then you said for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So he didn't throw any water on anybody. He got in a little verbal issue with a player. I understand you can't do that. You talk about an owner threw water on people. That's disrespectful. That's something that you teach your kids to not do.
Correct.
Like you threw water on people. I wouldn't throw water on my pets. Better yet, an individual who I don't know.
You might do it once.
If I'm giving them a bath, I'll do that. But just in a disrespectful way because you're mad, and he's mad because his team is getting whipped. And that's the thing. Leger, you know how it is as players. When you go to a ball game, and even as fans, when you go to a ball game, you're in enemy territory. If your team is not looking good, fans they will say whatever it is they want to say. You got to have tough skin.
Well, perfect example. There's a video that went viral of a guy walking by Mark Davis, I believe, in Vegas, and literally talking crazy to him. Like, he said some of the most outrageous stuff. Now, I don't know what that Jaguar fan said, but I couldn't imagine that it was worse than what dude was saying to Mark Davis. You know what he did? He smiled, rose his drink up to him, and took a sip and waved. That's what he did. That's what you're supposed to do. Like, you can't have a temper tantrum because somebody is berating you and talking crazy to you because your team is terrible right now. Like, that's what happens when you're the owner and your team is struggling. They're going to find you, especially if the window's open, and they're going to talk trash.
And once they know that you're going to take it, they're going to get
Yeah. You have to be an adult, take your medicine, and just keep it pushing.
Exactly. No question.
By the way, Scott Fowler, who covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer, wrote about this the other day. He said, and this is no surprise, that Tepper has fired basically all the people that will tell him no. So when you're surrounded by people that will only tell you what you want to hear, you're going to get in these situations where the GM, it just acts like you're invisible because he doesn't know what to do either.
Oh yeah, if you're the GM, best bet just be quiet. Act like you don't even see it.
That's right.
I don't see nothing. Yeah. Well, this is an interesting thing, and I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but there's been conspiracies thrown out there by a lot of Panther fans that supposedly, if you look at what Tepper's done in the last 5 years, right? He's been through 3 head coaches. They were in the running to build that facility in Rock Hill right across from Charlotte in South Carolina. He pulls and yanks that the last second. Supposedly, maybe this is him doing all this to potentially try to move the team from Carolina.
Well, he's still going to be the owner. I mean, he's still going to be crazy.
Yeah, but maybe he's just trying to alienate the fan base there so bad where he could just move the team.
Man, that is a conspiracy theory. And I'll say this, and Rick pointed this out too. If you're Ben Johnson, you want to come coach here?
Oh, yeah. No. Ben Johnson ain't going there. He's going to have the pick of the litter. He ain't going there.
Right. They're only 32 organizations, only 32 owners, only 32 jobs, but that's not the one you may want.
If we give him 20 a year.
The Panthers will not get a noteworthy head coaching candidate. They got to get someone who's just wanting to be a head coach.
Yeah.
They're not getting the guy who, like Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, Belichick. They're not getting that type guy.
I mean, Jim Harbaugh would last 4 hours at that place, given the way he likes to do things and the way things. Yeah. So, all right, that was Crazy Town USA number 1. Crazy Town USA number 2. We're going to go back.
It is the responsibility of the player to be sure that change in status is clearly communicated to the referee by both a physical signal with his hands up and down in front of his chest and to report to the referee his intention to report as an eligible receiver.
So I love that they got Dabo Swinney reading the rules so we all understand.
But hey, you know what's hilarious about that video, right? Is earlier they showed the Detroit Lions doing it the proper way in the same game. So it was almost like a dig at the Lions. They sent this video out to all 32 teams. They showed the Detroit Lions doing it the proper way, and then they showed that clip in regards to saying that you need to do it properly as far as the hand gesture on your chest and making it clear and cut for the ref. But one thing you notice on that video is like the ref is kind of moving away from the players as they're talking to him. So was this a situation where he was just used to seeing Dan Skipper report most of the game and he just assumed that it was Skipper while the Detroit Lions were trying to have some gamesmanship and confuse the Dallas Cowboys, but they actually confused the ref.
Right. Hey, BMac,
they were trying to be slick.
Let me ask you, BMac, this, and Leger, you can follow up too. But does it make sense for the Lions to try to confuse the defense because the official has to come over and tell you guys anyway who's eligible? So
thank you. Yes, it doesn't make sense.
That's why it didn't ever make sense.
Me and Leger, we on the defensive side together. All right, we're getting ready to get in the huddle. Once the tackle eligible comes in, the referee acknowledges who is eligible. He comes to us and say, "Hey, 74 is eligible." So now we're going to echo that.
Oh, we communicate that.
Yeah, hey, 74, 74, 74. And that's it's important for the second and third level guys. Leger, he's still rushing the passer. But for us in coverage, right? Linebackers, guys in the secondary, we got to echo that. Hey, remember, 74 is eligible. So now we gotta play the formation as such. So for them to try to finesse and confuse on the Cowboys, 9 times out of 10, they probably didn't see two guys running to the referee anyway, because we're looking to the sideline, either waiting for our signal or we waiting for our caller, whoever has the mic and the helmet, to kind of get us together. So we didn't even we usually don't see that.
Let me ask you this as a follow-up, though. So Skipper had been eligible earlier in the game throughout. Never had it been Decker. Would that be a confusion point for you guys if you thought it was usually going to be Skipper?
Well, no. My thing is, like BMac was saying, at the end of the day, the ref has to come over the mic and announce that. And the one thing on defense, it's all about communication. So like BMac said, we're going to reiterate that. We're going to say it multiple times. Hey, 68 is eligible, 68 eligible. And BMac, I know you said it's really important for the second and third level guys. But as a defensive end, if we know that a new guy is eligible, best believe we're getting hands on him at the line of scrimmage, right? Because what they usually like to do, Ryan, is what they did. They check release right there, right? So he'll act like he's blocking and then go. Well, a lot of defenses, if that guy's eligible and the defensive end makes contact with him, sometimes he owns him, man. So, like, if I'm a defensive end and I know that guy's eligible, I'm trying to wash him all the way down to the center. Like, you're not getting off the line of scrimmage at all. So, that's the thing. They tried to confuse the ref, but they confuse the Cowboys, but they ended up confusing the ref because I think I saw it somewhere. It might have been Emmanuel Acho. He was saying, what if the Cowboys didn't guard Decker on purpose because he wasn't eligible, right? Because if he's not eligible, he can catch all the passes he wants. Catch all the passes he wants. It's an illegal play.
For the Cowboys, Skipper was the guy who they were told was eligible. So no question 68 was going to be open because he wasn't supposed to be, he wasn't the eligible guy. He wasn't the guy that was communicated to them as the eligible guy.
And I know, BMac, I think we talked about this after the game. Here's what let me get what your thoughts are, Leger. It felt like to me after that all went haywire and they kept going for it on fourth down or whatever it was and kept getting farther away from both of you guys shaking your head. Here's what I said, and I said this to Rick too. I said it felt like Dan Campbell was saying, listen, it's us against them in this one game. We're going to be the third seed or whatever, so we're just going to keep going and prove ourselves. And Rick said if that was a playoffs, it would have been different.
Facts.
But the thing is, I don't. BMac, this is who he's been the whole year. Like when they cross the 50, like if it's fourth and less than 4, he's going for it. No matter what. That's who Dan Campbell has been.
If you go back to his presser, remember he said the reporter asked him about going for it even after the penalty.
Correct.
And he said, I told my guys during that drive, we're going to score and we're going for 2. And I wanted to keep my word.
No matter what.
Yeah. So,
it's baffling to me because like they still were in contention for the number 1 seed. Like I don't know if he was thinking about that in the back of his head. Like, dude, you can still be the number 1 seed. Like because you did that. Now San Francisco gets the rest of next week.
because of your video game like mentality, and also too, I feel like I don't know how you felt. But watching that game, if it went into overtime,
I like the Lions.
Detroit had momentum.
No question.
Especially if they got the ball first coming out of overtime, winning the coin toss. They had momentum. You saw how easily they went down the football field and scored. So listen, when the play was called back, the eligible confusion led to them calling it back. You move back. Yeah. Okay, you know what? Let's because they got bailed out from an offside penalty from Parsons. That's the thing. Yeah. So I'm like, when that happened, you move back. Okay, forget what I said, guys. I know we were supposed to go for it, but because of this penalty, I'm gonna coach the game the right way. Kick this field goal, and let's go score a touchdown.
Correct.
Nope. And by the way, and we'll go take a break here in a second. they bailed out Mike McCarthy because he was starting to leak oil down the stretch there.
Oh, God. Well, let's not even forget earlier in the game, they had a chance to kick a field goal when it was 4th and 4, and they went for it. So if they just kick the field goal there, they're not even in that scenario. Like
Mike McCarthy, situational coaching.
Oh, boy.
It's so bad.
Oh, boy.
It's been tough for him.
Oh, boy, it's so bad. He got bailed out, but not running the football, throwing the football. He threw the football 3 straight times.
Man, if it's a one-score game, right, and it's a live bet on the other team.
So
he might mess it up.
Yes.
Look, a one-word answer, and then we'll take a quick break and come back and talk about the playoffs in a second here. But BMac, if the Cowboys lose in the first round, is Mike McCarthy the coach in March?
Yes.
Oh, Leger.
No, not at all. You got to think, BMac, they've built this team up to be a championship team. That's all we've heard the last few years, right? Like, my thing is, if they weren't the number 2 seed, which they most likely will be if they go and beat the Commanders, who have the worst passing defense in all of football and already getting ready for the offseason. The only caveat to that is if Jacoby Brissett plays, I think that game is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be real. Because let's not forget, last year, Dallas was in the scenario where they could still win the NFC East, and they lost to Sam Howell and the Commanders. Now, the Eagles ended up winning, so it didn't matter. But the Eagles at the time were in a tight ball game versus Giants.
And that game was in Washington, too, right? That game was in Washington.
And they said Washington this year, too. So if Jacoby Brissett is playing, that game could get real interesting. But I think if they're the number 2 seed, I don't see them losing at home in the divisional round. Now, it depends on who they play, but I don't think anybody truly scares me. Now, the interesting thing will be, right, who are they going to be slated to play against, right? Will it be the Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks? The Seahawks actually should have beat them at home
the first
already
time.
this
The
year.
first time,
so
yeah.
If it's the Seattle Seahawks, I could see them now. The Seattle Seahawks are awful on defense right now. Like,
yeah, they are.
BMac, your Steelers did whatever they wanted to up in Seattle. So that's the only thing. If they can get healthier right before they play that game. But if they lose in the first round, I don't think McCarthy's the coach next year.
I sort of lean that way, too. All right, you mentioned the playoffs, Leger. I like that lead in there. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to tell you who's in and who's out in the playoffs right after this.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
All right, let's start with an easy one. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins, producer Harry's team. They've clinched the playoffs. That Bills game is going to be huge. And BMac, they moved to the Sunday night, so Steelers fans going to have to wait a long 28 hours or so because they play on Saturday. Steelers need to win that game. Which is the most likely scenario? Does Buffalo make the playoffs, which means they got to beat the Dolphins, and that's going to make them the division champs as well? Let's start there. What do you think, Leger?
That Steelers game is in Baltimore, right?
Yep.
Yep.
What are you shaking your head for?
I know you guys are big Steelers fans. I don't think John Harbaugh is not going to play his starters, man. You would have to say, just looking at the two teams and how they've played this year, yes, Steelers are playing hot right now, but the way this Ravens team has played, like, I think
everybody.
Yeah, and honestly, even with Huntley, I think they can still make some noise with him at quarterback. So I think it's going to be tough for the Steelers. The only caveat, right, is if he does pull them out at in the first quarter, I think the Steelers do have a good chance. There is a real scenario that the Bills could lose. I don't see that happening either, just because Miami is getting killed with injuries right now. When you talk about Raheem Mostert most likely being out, Jalen Waddle being out, Tua Tagovailoa got hurt in that game. He probably could have came back and played. Losing both of their pass rushers, right? Bradley Chubb is done for the year now.
That's huge.
Losing Jalen Phillips. And let's not forget, BMac, Xavier Howard is hurt too. He got hurt early in that game. So they're just dealing with too many injuries. And BMac, you know this, to make a real run at the playoffs, you got to have some luck. You got to have some injury luck, right? You got to get healthy at the right time. Buffalo is starting to get healthy at the right time. And for all the people that were talking about that defense and all the injuries it had, that defense honestly has been saving Josh Allen in this offense the last 3 weeks when you look at it, right? Rasul Douglas, right, was Defensive Player of the Week this past week.
That's the underrated trade of the trade deadline.
Oh, my God. Nobody was talking. Like, people said it was a good trade, but the way he's played, he's been dominant the last 3 weeks. And Bernhard, when Milano went down, like, people were worried about him. He's played really good football as well at the linebacking position. So if you look at this defense, I think they're top 10 like the last 4 or 5 weeks in almost every statistical category. Meanwhile, Josh Allen last week versus New England, 50% completion percentage, bad interception. And then when they were up, he's trying to run and get a first down. He gets tackled, BMac, and just throws the ball behind his head like he's trying to reach out and get a first down. And he fumbles the ball.
That's
like
what he
New England could have scored and took the lead with right there.
Yeah,
and you go back 2 weeks ago versus Dallas, that had nothing to do with Josh Allen. That was all James Cook. Right? He'd had 180 all-purpose yards. You know what Josh Allen threw for in that game? 94 yards and a 48% completion percentage. So people were talking about putting this dude in the MVP race. I'm like, have y'all not been watching film? Like when Joe Brady took over, he made it a conservative effort to run the football, right? And this defense has started to get healthy, and they played a lot better. Josh Allen should have not been in that discussion. When you throw an interception 11 out of 12 games, how can you be in the MVP race like that?
Oh, he's got more turnovers than anyone in the last 4 years, I believe.
It's not even close. It's not even close.
Yeah.
All right, BMac. I'll ask you this. So are the Bills going to beat the Dolphins to get in? And then you can circle down and tell me what your Steelers are going to do too.
I hope Miami wins, but I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with Leger. I think Miami, they're dealing with too many injuries. The key guys, man. And yes, Josh Allen has been turnover prone, but the flip side to Josh Allen, he's an elite talent playing the quarterback position as well.
He's a Dolphin killer too.
Yeah, that's the flip side. If this game was happening in around 1 o'clock with that sun beaming on that sideline to the visiting sideline, but Miami, man, they're dealing with that. No Chubb, Phillips. Is Jerome Baker back? I think he's still injured as well.
He's still out, yeah, too.
He's still injured.
Came back.
Yeah, Xavier Howard. You're playing against a team that has been in desperation mode going back 4 weeks ago in Buffalo. Yeah. So I hope Miami find a way to win this ball game. But if I had to put something on it, I'll take Buffalo because they're the healthier team.
It is funny how the Dolphins struggle against good teams. And it's hard to put your finger on why, because that offense is so explosive. But unlike the Ravens, which that offense travels and that defense travels, it feels like the Dolphins somehow hit a rough patch when they would go up against teams that are just a little better.
It's this. When you see teams struggle against a certain type of team, it boils down to them not being physical, them not being able to win the game in the trenches. When you talk about a team like Baltimore, their style of play will travel because they're a physical ball club, regardless of what type of scheme they're going against, offensively or defensively. They are physical in the trenches. So for Miami, they're not a physical team. Yes, they do an exceptional job running the football, but it's a finesse running style. They're not coming down powers and leads and things like that. It's more perimeter pulling guys and kind of using motion, and they kind of manipulate your eyes a little bit. And of course, Dallas,
deceptive.
Yeah, they try to manipulate you. Baltimore is coming down the teeth. You know what we're going to do.
You know what it is.
Yes. And they play the same way on the defensive side as well. So you talk about style makes fights. It's like that in the game of football. So for me, it's Miami. If they can come down the teeth of Buffalo's defense, that's where they're vulnerable at. I like Ed Oliver, but he's a bit undersized. You know what I mean? Sometimes he can kind of get lost in traffic a little bit. Linebacker-wise, with no Matt Milano, the same can be said. Those guys can kind of get lost in traffic. But if you're trying to hit the perimeter where they can just run, they're going to be successful. So in transitioning to Baltimore and Pittsburgh, number one, if Pittsburgh would have just beaten the Colts or Arizona or New England
or the Patriots, that's right.
Yeah, they wouldn't be in this scenario. This conundrum already. Yeah, they wouldn't be in this conundrum right now. If they would have started Mason Rudolph 2 weeks earlier, they would be okay. They wouldn't have to worry about anything. Now they got a window shop. They got to look outside their window and see what's going on and hopefully get in the playoffs. But I'll say this though, Leger. One thing I know about Baltimore and Pittsburgh, even with Lamar Jackson, with all their stars, they struggle against Pittsburgh.
They do.
They struggle against Pittsburgh.
They lost earlier this year. Yeah, they lost earlier. Yeah.
It's something about those teams where both coaches will emphasize this. We know them extremely well. They know us extremely well. So it's almost like who's going to be the most physical team. And TJ Watt, he loves two quarterbacks in the AFC North. He loves Joe Burrow. And he loves Lamar Jackson.
He got rid of Joe. Lamar's left.
So that's why I don't think they play a full game. I think they play a quarter, maybe a half, the starters. Because TJ Watt, it's something about TJ. He's always in the backfield with Lamar Jackson. And, Pittsburgh, I wouldn't be surprised to see Pittsburgh find a way to win. You know,
all right,
especially with
Leger,
them pulling.
You got 8 minutes, so we're going to try to speed through these things. And I'll say this too: we talk about that 2019 Ravens team sitting starters. You don't want to be the John Harbaugh who plays Lamar and he gets hurt either. That's a conversation you don't want to have.
Issue. Yeah.
So you got to be careful. All right, let's go to the AFC South. Every one of these teams, Jacksonville, Houston, Indy, can still win the division.
Crazy.
Houston faces Indy, and Jacksonville faces the David Teppers. Leger, who wins the division?
Well, Jacksonville actually plays Tennessee. They just played Carolina this last.
Oh, sorry, that's right. Yep,
Yeah.
You got it.
I think Tennessee Titans have packed it up. I think if Will Levis was playing, this game would be a little bit more interesting. But with him getting hurt and Ryan Tannehill seems like he's already ready for the offseason already.
Yes, sir.
I think the Jacksonville Jaguars win this. Now, the interesting thing is Saturday we get to figure out which team from the AFC South, whether it be the Houston Texans or the Colts, who none of us probably in the beginning of the year said had a chance to make the playoffs. Two rookie head coaches when you look at Shane Steichen and also my guy DeMeco Ryans, right? I'm leaning towards Houston winning this game, even though it's on the road, right? When you look at this, right, the Colts boat raced them earlier, right? They were up by 18 going into the fourth quarter. Stroud still threw for like 380, but a lot of it was garbage yardage. But C.J. Stroud coming back last week, completing 75% of his passes, I think was big just for the mental capacity of the Houston Texans, right? And the one thing about the Indianapolis Colts, and we know with Shane Steichen with the RPO, they want to run the football. Well, this Texans defense has not gotten enough credit for how they've stopped the run this year. They're only giving up 3.3 yards a carry, BMac. So we always talk about, right, styles make fights, right? This Texans defensive front, and I know me and Ryan have talked about, them and Will Anderson a lot this year. He came on strong last week with 2 sacks as well. But if Jonathan Grenard could come back and they get them in third and long situations, Grenard is going to get a bag this offseason. He already had 12.5 sacks. He missed, I think, the last few games, but we'll see if he's able to practice this week to give them a boost. I just think it comes down to the quarterback play, and I trust C.J. Stroud a little bit more, even though he's a rookie. Gardner Minshew played really well last week, right? Was efficient with the ball, didn't turn it over. They ran the ball well with Jonathan Taylor at home. They're at home this game, but I'm liking the Texans to pull off the upset.
BMac, let me set it up for you. Over the last month of the season, the team with the most sacks in the NFL, Houston Texans. I got 21.
Yeah.
Number one. Number two, no one on planet Earth has once mentioned, hey, man, why did the Texans trade up to number 3 to get Will Anderson Jr.? I mean, no one cares. That turned out to be a grand slam of a trade. Correct. So that works out as well. So, BMac, what do you think of the AFC South in terms of who wins and who gets in?
I think Jacksonville wins because, as Leger mentioned, Tennessee has nothing to play for. They're just trying to get out of this ball game healthy, right? I love Houston. I love Houston against Indy. I'm taking the best quarterback. Having C.J. Stroud come back last week instead of coming back this week was huge. Man, he didn't do a lot, but he did enough, right? Yeah, he got his feet wet. He got his blood flowing again. So now he should be much better in this outing against the Colts than what he was last week. And he played pretty good football a week ago at home. And Will Anderson, he had 2 sacks last week. He's playing some of his best football in the month of December.
Amen.
Sheldon Rankins as well, another former first rounder playing great football. So these guys are hunting. They're hunting on the defensive side. So I take Houston against the Colts.
All right, let's run through these real quick so we can get back and talk about the Steelers quarterback controversy. So we all agree Dallas is going to win it.
Yep.
Do we?
NFC East.
Do we?
Man, have you seen the Eagles play?
You mean, yeah. But my thing is, if they win versus the Giants and Dallas slips up like they did last year, then the Eagles win the division.
But I can see both teams slipping up, honestly.
That is true. Because let's not forget, Dallas has not been as explosive on offense the last few weeks, right? If you go back to the Miami game, right, they lost a close, low-scoring game. They won a close-scoring game versus Detroit. And BMac, we know this. Detroit defense was awful going into that game.
Yeah.
Right? Now, CeeDee Lamb had a big day, and so did Dak. But the Detroit Lions did really well in the red zone, right?
I'll say this. For Jerry Jones' health, Dallas, don't screw this up.
No, I don't.
If they mess around and lose the Commanders, oh my, and Philly wins,
they might fire McCarthy before the playoffs.
That's the thing. He might get Jerry Jones might give him the David Tepper treatment and throw a drink in his face before he sends him out into the street. All right, so the NFC North, we know about the Lions there.
Yep.
I feel like Green Bay's next man up.
I do.
I think they're in trouble this week because they're playing the Chicago Bears, and they're one of the hottest teams.
Okay,
like they were in this scenario last year with the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions had nothing to play for. Chicago has nothing to play for, but Justin Fields is still putting great tape out there just in case he gets traded. And it's not just Fields, right? It's the team. The defense, since the trade to Montez Sweat, is playing top 10 defense right now, right? So like Jalen Johnson and then Stevenson with a couple interceptions.
Edwards, that linebacker.
Yeah, like they played really good football for the last month. So
to the point that Matt Eberflus got his job saved.
Yeah. Oh, so they came out and confirmed it already?
Not confirmed, but according to the report, I think Rappaport reported.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense.
All right.
I'm not an Eberflus fan, but yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, people that play for him like him. Like they say he's a good coach, but at the end of the day, it's about wins and losses.
Yep.
And finally, man, the NFC South. So Tampa Bay wins. They win the division. They lose. Some other team wins the division.
Tampa not losing to Carolina. No.
They're not losing to the fighting David Teppers.
No, they're not losing.
Well, the interesting thing is the Saints can still get in the wild card even if they don't win the division.
Yeah, no, I think that's right too. But I mean, look, that
I don't want to see two teams get in from the NFC South. I don't.
No one wants that.
I think it should be illegal for that to happen.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we're going to quickly talk about the Steelers quarterback controversy on the other side after this.
Out there are two colossal beings, both forces of nature in their own regard. But in here, as soon as the chute bursts open, the duality of man and beast begins to fade. This is PBR on CBS Sports Network.
All right, BMac, when you were at Pittsburgh, there was no QB controversy because it was Big Ben's team. We saw, Charlie Batch played. We saw Byron Leftwich play. We saw some dudes come through there, but it was always Big Ben's team. Things have changed now since he retired. They drafted Kenny Pickett. He was the starter last year, for most of last year and most of this year prior to injuries. I'll just say this. Joe Flacco's return since November 20th, 13 touchdowns. Ooh. The last 2 years, Kenny Pickett, 13 touchdowns. So it ain't like you've been setting the world on fire. You've talked up Mason Rudolph starting for a few weeks now, and he's looked pretty good. Now, Kenny Pickett had to come out and say, I didn't even know this was a storyline. Someone on Twitter said that he wasn't going to be number 2. He had to come out and tell the media that he never said that. Cam Hayward has his own podcast, had to come out and say that sounds crazy to him, but he had no knowledge of the actual comings and goings, but it didn't feel like a Kenny Pickett thing. Did you ever have any sort of controversy in the locker room that Mike T had to handle? Because it feels like that's something he would squash pretty quickly.
Nah, not really. We've always had an easy float when I was there. Nothing really internally that was an issue that kind of got outside to media. What right now, this story, I can tell you this much. If Pittsburgh beats Baltimore and Mason plays the way he played the last 2 ball games and they get into the playoffs, Mason was starting the playoffs.
He has to.
Yeah, he was.
I don't even think that should be a discussion to be talked about. Like, what are we talking about?
I agree.
You go with the hot hand.
Yeah,
but they were so stubborn.
The thing is, though, what happens now is if that scenario becomes a reality, guys, in the offseason, now you really have a quarterback issue.
You need to have one. Sure. You need to have that conversation, though.
You do. Sure. You have one. So you invested a first rounder in a guy 2 years ago who played okay in spurts, but for the most part, the offense wasn't generating and doing what they were supposed to do. Now, in comes Mason Rudolph, who's been a part of the organization since 2019 or something like that. So he understands the offense. He understands the way the Steelers do things, and he's experienced. He's more polished. You can tell that throw he made when that pocket was collapsing last Sunday in Seattle, hit George Pickens on that 7 cut, and he didn't panic. That was outstanding. Unfortunately, we've seen Kenny Pickett get out of the pocket too soon.
That's right. So Mason Rudolph not only did not have an opportunity to set his feet, I thought he was going to throw the speed out to Dion underneath. I said, throw it deep. And he said, I got you. And he threw it deep. I mean, that's a big boy play.
Yeah. So I feel like, go ahead, Leger.
Yeah, I would say just real quick, like to me, this will be interesting, right? Because we've actually seen Mason Rudolph start a couple of games for the Steelers. Like we always talk about this, we know with backup quarterbacks, there's usually a 3-4 game window, and then they come back down to reality because everybody gets tape on them, right? So, like, is this a scenario where Mason Rudolph is hot right now, and say the Steelers do get in the playoffs, and then he just has a terrible game? Like, do they just automatically go back to Kenny Pickett, or do they go back to the drawing board?
You go draft a quarterback. Like if you're picking 15th, they get in the playoffs, so I won't be picking 15th. But man, I'm telling you, if there's Michael Penix Jr. sitting there, or somehow you find yourself with Jaden Daniels and you don't take him, you will regret it. Because Kenny Pickett came out of that draft class where all those quarterbacks weren't any good anyway. Yeah. And what are we doing? You got to – the thing, like, obviously I'm a huge Steelers guy and I love Mike Tomlin. But the stubbornness, you got to admit your mistakes and move on. And if Kenny Pickett ain't that dude, like with Matt Canada, come on. We knew
it took too long with that situation.
Right. That's right.
Took too long.
All right. Let's get out of here because Leger's got more important things to do.
Y'all funny.
Oh, boy. All right. So, look, that's a wrap. Thanks to Leger and BMac for joining us. Thanks to Harry for producing, of course. Thanks to all you guys who watch and listen. Make sure to join us tomorrow for more NFL coverage. And while you're at it, give us a little thumbs up on the YouTubes. And if you're listening to the audio version, make sure you download, follow, and leave a 5-star review. Thank you, folks. We'll see you later.